definitely. I think I've struggled with that a little bit as far as like, I think we call it imposter syndrome in
Mm-hmm.
med school, and thinking, oh man, like all these other kids in my class are so serious about being doctors, and here I am like taking 2 extra years to do triathlon, and maybe I'm not as serious as them, maybe I'm not as dedicated, and I think it has taken like a little bit of grappling with for
Mm-hmm.
me, and I think I've like come in. It's easier now that I've gone through the match, and I got a great match and a great outcome, so it makes it seem validating. But I think it was a little bit hard for me to balance like those two identities and say, I can have these two things that are both really important to me, and that doesn't make me like a lesser future doctor or a lesser triathlete, and I can be both.
Today on the show, I have a special guest who was referred to me from one of our other guests, Todd Buckingham, who we'll talk about here in a minute. She's a former collegiate runner, former Cat 1 cyclist. As an amateur, she was the USA Triathlon National Champion, currently racing as a professional triathlete for Purple Patch Fitness and Matt Dixon. And as of today, finishing medical school, getting ready to start residency. So welcome to the show, Cecilia Davis-Hayes.
Thanks so much for having me, Jesse.
So first, we got to give you congratulations for finishing off the end of medical school.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting at long last. It's come to a close. So we just finished our like ready for residency course, which is like the final month, and they kind of synthesize all the high yield information we're going to need when we start our residency in a couple weeks. So that kind of made us feel a little bit more prepped and ready to go. Because it's also it's a big accomplishment, but it's also really scary because it means you're going out into the real world and you're no longer a student, and someone actually is going to call you doctor now. So
Yeah.
that's a big step.
So have you, I've forgotten the like timeline. Have you put in your bids residency and done the matrix and all that yet?
Yeah, the Matrix. That's funny. Yes, yeah, I have. So back in on March 15th, so a little over a month ago, we found out our match. So it's for those people who don't know the medical field. It's basically you go on this long application process, and you interview at a bunch of programs, and then you rank those hospital programs in the order of your preference, and then they rank you, and it puts it into this whole algorithm that comes out and spits out your match. And so yeah, that's so we all know where we're going for next year. So I'm not too dramatic, but I'm staying in New York City, going across town a little bit to the east side to Weill Cornell Medical Center, which is sort of affiliated. My program is affiliated with the cancer hospital there, Memorial Sloan Kettering, and then the kind of orthopedic hospital for special surgery. So
Okay.
that'll be my next 5 years.
A five. Okay. So yeah, you definitely got some time there. You are, my college roommate did his match and he has a wife, so they were both trying to match together. Is it just you or no extra strings attached?
So that's the couples match, and
Right.
a lot of people do that, and it's extra stressful. But luckily, no, I didn't have to go through that. I do have a partner fiance who's in medicine as well, but we were kind of staggered, so
Okay.
he's a bit ahead of me, so that makes it easier. He can kind of follow me, or yeah, he has a good job here that he just started, so that was one of the reasons why we ended up deciding to stay in New York.
Good deal. Yeah, I know. I know for him it was a lot of stress, and they actually ended up in two different cities. She was in Indianapolis, and he was in Baltimore, so it didn't quite work out. So I was hoping you didn't have to go through the same thing.
Yeah, it turned out okay for me.
So I think I read you're deciding to specialize in radiology.
That's correct.
So what I mean, what drew you into radiology in particular?
Yeah, so it was a tough decision for me. I really liked all of the specialties in medicine. During my clinical rotations, you have to do, of course, like general internal medicine and primary care and obstetrics and surgery and neurology, and you have to get a sprinkling, exposure to all these specialties. And I really liked everything. After all the rotations, I thought, I could do this, I could do that. So it was a tough decision for me. But I think it came down to really who seemed the happiest in their career. So the doctors who I spoke
Hmm.
to at like further out stages, I think that was gave me the most information to make a good decision, because it's really hard to tell from the limited exposure you have as a student what that life is really going to be like and what that
Right.
career path and the people. And I kind of always had been intrigued by radiology and thought that, oh, this kind of neat, this really powerful tool, right? Like, think about how often, particularly athletes, but of course any patients, are relying on, like, oh, what's the result of the MRI, what's the result of the CT scan? Like, you're the
Hmm.
one who gets to kind of determine that. So it felt really important. So I always knew that in the back of my head. And then I took a month-long rotation in it and saw how happy these people were, and had great job satisfaction, and like longevity of interest in their field, which was very appealing to me, because I think I was a little scared that the high rates of burnout in other fields, and I wanted to avoid that if possible.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Is there anything like, is there a specialty? Like, so you have to apologize. I'm only like surface level familiar basically
Your roommate.
through my roommate, so he's in PM&R,
Okay.
so like we get to talk sometimes because I'm like, I messed this up. What do I do? Like, and he's just finishing his residency actually. But anyway, like, is there anything like a specialty in radiology like that interests you, or just the field as a whole because of that satisfaction?
Yeah, it's a pretty diverse field, which
Right.
people don't, like any field in medicine, you can almost create your niche within it. And
Right.
so there are a couple areas that are especially appealing to me. There's sort of, I could keep the sports theme alive with doing like a musculoskeletal
Hmm.
radiology path, which they actually do quite a few procedures, like in injections and like arthrograms, which kind of like injecting dye and then taking a
Hmm.
picture, um, and like ultrasound guided, steroid injections and things like that, and then interpreting like these really complex, like a foot MRI, very detailed, and so that is definitely appealing to me, and continue. I could work with athletes. I think I went into med school thinking maybe I would want to do some sort of sports medicine. That didn't end up being like such a good fit outright to do like orthopedics or
Hmm.
primary care, sports medicine. I thought about those things. So that would be one option. The other, really, I had a mentor in medical school who's a breast radiologist. So they do a lot of like the biopsies for women who have a suspicious mass, and
Hmm.
then even, yeah, so and even are kind of able to see these patients throughout the course of their illness and have a little bit more of a relationship. So I think that's pretty appealing, because one downside of radiology is that you might not have as much like patient interaction. If you're reading scans from your reading room, you might not have an opportunity to have as much of that interaction. So I think that the breast radiology is on the end of the spectrum that's a little bit more involved. So I guess those two are appealing, but
Okay.
it's something I'll have so much more opportunity to explore in in those 5 years, and kind of make a more informed decision at that point. But
You don't really have to like specialize until several years from now, or is it even after residency that you?
yeah, I mean, you don't really even need to. There are general radiologists who do
Right.
everything. I think in a city, in a big city like New York, you really need to put, your hat on and say, I am X type of radiologist. Only does, you a service, it seems like, to kind of market yourself as such and
Hmm.
have a specific like expertise. But I know plenty, doing all these interviews in different places. I interviewed all over the country and talk to people at, say, like University of Colorado, University of Utah, who were going straight into practice after residency,
Hmm.
and doing it all. So that's kind of, that's certainly an option if you want to move to like a more rural place. Yeah.
Okay. So that kind of leads me to like, the elephant in the room, I guess, because I think I heard you. I think it was the interview you did with your coach for his podcast.
Yeah.
Talk about taking. No, I could have read it. I tried to do some background research on you. Um, Talking about taking time off from medical school just to race.
Hmm.
So I think the elephant in the room now is, are you on pause for residency? Are you gonna like try to continue racing at the professional level, or like what's the plan?
Yeah. Yeah. Big question in my life. It's honestly sort of been the question for me for a number of years, really, since I started competing at a high level, first in cycling about maybe 6 years ago, and I competed in the Tour of California and
Mhm.
some bigger stage races, and and then found triathlon and had pretty immediate success. Like you said, I was won age group nationals. My after doing after being swimming for less than a year, and
Mhm.
less than like 6 months into triathlon, so it's kind of immediate success. And I had was in the middle of med school, and I kind of had to face this decision of, do I like proceed with the course of least resistance as far as my academic training, and sort of have to leave triathlon as a second and as an afterthought, or do I kind of devote more time to it, and sort of craft my schooling, with triathlon in mind. And I ended up
Mhm.
doing the latter. And like I said, on the Purple Patch podcast, I was able to take 2 extra years of med school. Sort of it was time off, but I really was a full-time student, still doing research. So I was
Mhm.
able, but that's much more flexible than you could imagine. You can sort of do a lot of the research from wherever you have your laptop,
Right. Right.
as opposed to like the clinical rotations where you really have to be in the hospital. So yeah, so that was kind of my um, gift to myself of, hey, this is really important to me. I'm having a lot of success at this. Like, let's take some time to focus on this, and sort of a focus on triathlon. And then was sort of an unknown as to what would happen after that. I thought,
Mhm.
oh, maybe I won't keep getting better, and then I'll make the decision easy. Or maybe I won't feel like doing it anymore, and that'll make the decision easy. And I think, luckily, neither of those things have happened. I really excited about it, and I'm racing now. The fourth year med school in the spring is sort of a little bit like senior spring, so you have pretty much time to race. So I've gotten in a couple. I've already raced twice, and then I have St. George coming up this weekend, and I'll be able to
Mhm.
race two more times before my internship starts in June. So I guess I kind of, to answer your question directly, I don't know if I'm going to keep able to keep racing, but
That's fair.
I've got to see how much extra, or, how much spare time I have outside of the hospital, and if I
Mhm.
be filling that time with swimming, biking, and running, or if I want to be filling that with, other things.
So this is kind of a sensitive question for some people with their coaches. So like if you don't want to share this, that's okay. But like what kind of like training load are you doing hours wise right now?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I can definitely answer. So, funnily enough, I don't track my hours, so I like
Hmm.
actually have no idea. I could probably give you an estimate.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean like I know like I'm roughly at like 8 to 10 hours a week because I've brought my load down. I don't pay attention to it every week, but just like as a
yeah,
general sense.
roughly, yeah. Probably more like 12 to 15. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I have a fair amount, really, in the last, with those 2 year research years, and then even in this last year, I basically I came back and did my like fourth year from kind of March last year, in March 2018 to May 2019. And in that time, I had commitments, but it was never a really grueling schedule. So I was really able to
Hmm.
have quite a bit of time to train and race and travel to race. So yeah, I think I'm probably on the lower end for sure of the, professional athletes that my coaches, or in the professional athletes in general, for sure.
Hmm.
But I've always been sort of a less is more type of person, a philosophy.
Right.
And I feel like that's always worked for me. We were talking about before we went on live that I was ran in college, but never was able to make it more than halfway through the season without having some sort of injury or some sort of sickness or anemia or something. And I think doing less running for sure and having the variety of the three sports has really helped me to stay healthy. So, well, of course, 12 to 15 hours sounds like a ton for a lot of folks out there. For the girls I'm towing the line against is not a ton.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, even I guess for some perspective, like the last few years I was working out like 15 to 17 hours a
Wow.
week
Yeah.
and doing 70.3. Actually, we were both out at Eagleman this last year, although
Oh,
you wouldn't know that, and I didn't know at the time.
okay.
And we're racing similar speeds.
Okay. Yes. There you go. Yeah.
So, it's kind of like my coach said in the episode with him that there's many ways to make a pizza. You can make a good pizza very many different ways. So it seems like your load is probably more reasonable. I was just concerned if you were going to say, oh, I'm working out 20, 25 hours a week. It's like if you have to maintain that kind of load to
Mm,
keep the kind of fitness, it's
yeah.
going to just be mania trying to cram that in with anything else, really.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I think if no matter what, I'm gonna have to cut down somewhat, and it's just a
Yeah.
matter of whether I'm able to um, yes, if to kind of squeeze it in a way that makes sense. Like, am I able to, do a running commute? I'm got my hospital where I'm going to do my internship year is like 5 miles away. So can I like run both ways and I
Hmm.
don't know, get in the training there and kind of um, craft and maybe all I'll feel like doing when I come home from the hospital is going for like a bike ride and maybe that'll work
Yeah.
or like it's so hard to predict what you're going to be like what your life circumstance if talk to people who have kids and they're like I don't know if I'm going to be able to compete after I have a kid and some people can go totally one way. They're like, oh, what I want to do when daddy's taking care of little Benny is like go work out, and other people who are like, I can't leave him, or I want to just go watch movies while I have my time, time to myself. So it's funny how you can't really, as much as of course triathlon is like really important to me and I've had so much satisfaction training and racing and I love it, love the community. It would be like foolish, I think, to say, oh, of course I'm going to keep doing it, like I'm going to make it work, because that would just be
Right.
sort of unrealistic.
So I'm kind of curious, like, since you changed sports several times, runner to cyclist to triathlete, and then like you're doing the med school thing. So this is something I always had trouble with. So maybe I'm hoping you could help me and maybe anybody listening. Like, how do you deal with the mental side of like changing priorities and saying, trying to balance like what is the priority and like just because I kind of think about it in the sense that like my identity was I'm a runner, but then it's like when I'm not just running anymore, now I'm a triathlete. Am I a triathlete? Like, how do you deal with that kind of changing priority mentally?
Hmm. Yeah, I guess I've really, at each step, I've kind of just dove in head first and like put on the triathlon goggles. I'm like, I'm in, guys. Like, I'm now, you adopt me. I'm like here, I'm all in. And it was that way too. I started out as this like soccer player was my first love. And like, I was, all into that. And then it was like, okay, soccer's gone. And now I'm all into the next thing. So, and same with, when I got into cycling, I didn't run a step for like 3 years. It was like,
Hmm.
I'm a cyclist now. Like, this is it. And then sort of, yeah, it was a little bit different when I went from cycling to triathlon because obviously you still are doing that sport.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I've always been really strongly um, like very very competitive, but in a very like goal oriented way, and looking forward to like perfecting the recipe of a new sport and like learning
Hmm.
how how I was going to go about that. And with triathlon, it was like, okay, how can I become teach myself to swim, and how can I you know um, get the best advice and go and kind of work on the form and have fun with it still. And so yeah, I guess it was a great question that you asked, but I've never really thought about it quite like that. I've never had an identity crisis. I think I've just like stormed in the room and been like, guys, like I'm here, like I'm doing this, like can I join your swim group?
Well,
Um,
maybe that's, I mean, maybe that's the whole solution is just like, don't hesitate. Like, if you decide that's what you're gonna do, just do it wholeheartedly, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, definitely. I think I've struggled with that a little bit as far as like, I think we call it imposter syndrome in
Hmm.
med school, and thinking, oh man, like all these other kids in my class are so serious about being doctors, and here I am, like taking 2 extra years to do triathlon, and maybe I'm not as serious as them, maybe I'm not as dedicated, and I think that took me it has taken like a little bit of grappling with
Hmm.
me. And I think I've like come in. It's easier now that I've gone through the match, and I got a great match and a great outcome, so it makes it seem validating. But I think it was a little bit hard for me to balance like those two identities and say, I can have these two things that are both really important to me, and that doesn't make me like a lesser future doctor or a lesser triathlete. And I can be both, and I just need to like on the day to day they sort of are competing,
Hmm.
but you have to, yeah, I guess just as the choices come at you, am I gonna get some extra sleep because I stayed up late working on an assignment, or am I gonna get up for masters at 5:30? Each of those decisions, of course, comes at you like day after day, multiple
Hmm.
decisions a day, even that are micro, level. And I think I find that challenging for sure. Like, what's the bigger priority? Like, what's the right thing to do here? And I think that, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, if for whatever it's worth, I would say like grappling with that kind of imposter syndrome, like I guess my advice or hopefully uplifting moment for
Mhm.
you would be like you're working on being the best Cecilia you can be, not the best like Jim or Susan or whoever. Like
Sure.
uh, the thing I kind of have embraced over time because I'm in a little bit of everything. Like I do a little bit of this, I do a little bit of that. Like um, not to make light of mental illness, it's almost like ADD. I don't have ADD, but it's that kind of very flitting from one thing to another, but also wanting to master everything.
Yeah.
I kind of like embrace it in the sense that like sometimes you don't know where those experiences are going to lead you, and those unique experiences will help you later on in ways that you don't necessarily have the ability to see now.
Yeah.
So like I
Yeah.
guess that would be my moment of encouragement for you is like I think those experiences will probably come together later at a time when you'll go, you'll see things a certain way that nobody else can see because of the journey you've been on.
Mm, I like that. I like that.
So